Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
We make it a podcast, Tom.
We're making a podcast.
Make it a podcast.
We're making a podcast.
Make it a podcast.
Hi, everybody. Podcast. Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name isn't. It's Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour.
Man, what if we would have...
What if we did?
That would have probably enriched our lives if we did that.
Yeah. No, it's 3 hours long, Tom. We just watched...
That's a lot.
Yeah. Is it The Exorcist or is it Exorcist?
It is. It's The Exorcist Believer.
The Exorcist Believer. Don't stop believing.
Don't be scared.
We've met before.
Are you looking for Reagan?
Are you looking for Reagan? She burns in hell!
Singer in a smoky room, Dave. The smell of wine and cheap perfume.
What's going on with this?
The Exorcist,
this has a lot of... Yeah, this bombed, right? This did not do good.
It didn't... It bombed in the sense that Universal paid $400 million for the distribution rights to a new Exorcist trilogy. Now, this movie, it made like $28 million its opening weekend, which is a perfectly serviceable box office return for a horror movie. That this movie, like, actually budget-wise, doesn't look like it was that expensive. So I don't know, but like, it damn sure wasn't what they wanted for all that money that they paid. So I know that they're like retooling their plans for the trilogy, although the other two movies are apparently still going to come out. But
that's what they said. I saw that where they're like, we're still doing it, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of have to, don't you? You paid $300 million.
400.
You're gonna have to try 400. You're gonna have to try to get $400 million out of this somehow.
Yeah, you dummies.
That's way too much money. Yeah, you idiots.
Why on earth did you pay $500 million for a franchise that is 50 years old?
Yep. Even if this didn't get terrible reviews,
which it has,
that's still too much. Which it has. It's gotten terrible audience reviews, terrible critic reviews. I think Rotten Tomatoes always makes things worse than it's. I think the reviews are mostly lukewarm. I would say.
I think the reviews are mostly mid. Yeah.
Mid. It has a lot of swimming around it on the social meds. We kind of had to cover it.
It's a big movie. Yeah.
I was dreading this.
Oh, me too. I wasn't.
Yeah,
I wasn't super looking forward to it. Although, anyway,
I saw it in the big theater, the XD Cinemark XD.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
Totally deserted. I was the only one in there.
That made it scarier, though.
Movie.
That was on purpose. That was part of the XD experience, Dave. Is they clear out the rest of the theaters so it's scarier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tom, what did you think of Exorcist Believer?
I hated this movie. I hated this movie from start to finish. I thought this movie is a big piece of shit. It is one of the most cynical movies I've ever seen. It is absolutely a movie by the director of Halloween Ends.
Yep. I didn't hate this movie, but
really?
I'm glad you did.
Oh, I
didn't love it or anything, but there was some stuff in it that I was like, he's a good filmmaker, right?
Well,
so there's some stuff in it that I'm like, oh, that was a good idea. I kind of ended it being like, like I walked out of it, and I was like, yeah, I think that was okay. And the more I think of it, the more I forget about it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like, I'm not gonna die on any hills for this movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's just like all of the stuff that's good, like the positive reviews that I've seen, all call out the first half of the movie. And I agree, the first half of the movie is much, much better. It's where they're doing the dread thing. But the reason the first half of the movie is good is just because he's copying the first half of The Exorcist. Like, he's copying the Friedkin shots, or the shots that Friedkin and his director of photography picked. Like,
Right.
The parts of the movie that are good are the parts where he's directly copying The Exorcist. So I can't give him credit for that.
Oh yeah, that definitely makes sense. I actually didn't mind some of the exorcism itself. I
thought it was so dumb. Was this movie scary at any point to you?
No.
This was like the most boring. Like, it's never scary. There's so many scenes, and they're back-to-back scenes of people just going on and on and on about, like, gobbledygook about, like, belief and religion and stuff. And in the end, none of it matters. Like, did you notice that? Like, it's called Believer, and it's supposed to be about, like, finding your belief, but, like, the characters are so thinly drawn that we never know what any of them want because it changes on a scene-by-scene basis. Like, we have to talk about the priest. The priest is incredible.
The priest is incredible. There's a lot of this. Well, all right, so yeah, I'll talk about what's good about it because there's not much, and then we'll talk about. I think it was right to be a slow burn, right?
Because The Exorcist is like the whole. Yeah. The thing that's scary about The Exorcist, like, I mean, when you finally get to the full-blown possession and it's over the top, it's shocking. But, like, the movie has, for an hour already, been fucking with you and doing this slow burn, creepy stuff. Like, everything the original one does, with the exception of, like, maybe the spider walk, and even that's in, like, the director's cut. But everything the original one does is, like, so subtle, and everything this one does.
Yeah, until it's not
Until
subtle.
It gets fucking loud as shit. Yeah. And this one just drops the ball like the instant it gets to that moment. The scene with the little girl in the church, the movie gets immediately bad from that point on, in my opinion, and never recovers.
Oh, and the characters do too.
Yeah, the characters make no sense. They make no sense. Sorry.
Yeah, I like that it was trying to be kind of a drama. I liked the part when they are found in the woods, that like sequence of them in the hospital. Like, they were trying to go for like kind of an emotionally upsetting film, which I don't think. The problem is that kids today don't care, right? So people going into this trying to get a horror movie like The Nun type, they're not getting that, right? Critics going in to get like an art house film that's going to say something, they're also not getting that, which is why everybody hated it, right? Because it didn't serve anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I could have seen a world where this got terrible reviews from critics and then like amazing reviews from audiences, but because it's not going for either of those,
like, it's not even scary.
Yeah, I think so. I know people who are very scared of possession who will be scared by this. My sister, like, every possession movie scares her. So there are people who are scared by this concept, but me, like, no, not that scary. I thought there were neat ideas, like having to choose one of the girls. Neat idea. That's a horror idea, right? That's a devastating idea.
Yeah, but they slide it in the middle of the exorcism. So they slide it in with about 15 minutes of the movie left. So, like, that's all the time we have to wrestle with it. And then, like, they just sort of, one of the dads just kind of says it at the end. Like, he says, "Pikachu, I choose you," to his daughter. And that's it. The possession's over. So it's like nothing they did. All this crap about, like, banding together with the people around you. Like, there are so many monologues and soliloquies in this movie where the characters are like waxing philosophical, but like if you sat and actually listened to any of them, they're gibberish. Like the speech that fucking Ellen Burstyn makes at the end about like faith and belief and stuff and how it's about people. Like the common thing in every exorcism is people. It's like, well, sure, you could say that about fucking anything because anything requires people. But she's like, it's about people coming together, and so she's going through this long thing during the montage at the end of the movie, and it's like the movie forgot that it just showed us two things. One, it just showed us that all of these people coming together and the power of faith and all that shit didn't matter at all, because all they really needed to do was play the demon's game with it for 1 second, and the possession was over. And then the second thing about it, that the movie seems to be forgetting, is what it just showed us before this, like, Ellen Burstyn, who has been blinded, by the way, just waxing about
that. That was amazing.
Incredible. Talking about
I cackled.
Faith and believing in each other and people coming together. It's like the last thing we saw before that was a little girl being dragged to hell.
Yeah. That's all right. So
and
that's
it's like trying to give us this like powerful, uplifting ending.
Right.
What the fuck is this movie, Dave?
That's the thing. It was like they couldn't figure out what tone because I like that idea. The little girl dragged to hell. I was like, oh, that's really dark. The movie spends a lot of time setting up stuff that it doesn't really pay off is what ultimately it comes down to.
Yes.
So you're watching, like a lot of my notes earlier was like, this isn't bad. I hope it's leading to something.
It sure isn't.
And it kind of was like, for example, I want to talk about the main guy, the father.
Yeah.
Because again, Exorcist believer. There's all this stuff about his faith.
It changes on a scene-by-scene basis depending on what the movie needs him to do.
Well, it changes on one scene specifically, which is like...
When he reads the book?
The moment... Yes, he reads her book. And that was it.
That was it?
And like they do this whole thing where he's like, I don't believe in this crap. She's not possessed. He goes and sees Ellen Bernstein, and she's like, I experienced this. Here, read my book. And then he's just like, okay, let's do it. It's an exorcism. It's a demon. And that's all it takes. And the movie spends so long setting up this idea that he's going to have to be convinced. All they had to do, and this was what was wild to me, all they have to do is have him see something that is supernatural, right? Like, and then that would do it for me as an audience to go like, okay, yeah, I get it.
How does it happen in the first movie, right? Because like she doesn't start out as a nun; she's an actress shooting a film, and she thinks her daughter's sick. But then she sees shit that she can't understand, so she calls in the priest.
Yeah, and he reads this book, and then he's just like, "Yep, that's it. We're doing it." And that was so bizarre to me.
Well, then he loses his faith again when they're doing like the Lord's Prayer circle, and the demon looks at him and says, "You don't believe," because this movie has one bag of tricks and it's girls in makeup doing spooky voices. He like his faith is shaken again. Like and then he has to go back outside and call the priest back in, and then like it does like this triumphant hero moment when the priest comes in, even though we don't even know
like a Marvel movie.
We don't even know his
like
fucking name, Dave. What was his name? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what any character's name was.
He wasn't important. So that the priest is a perfect sums up what happens in a lot of this movie, which again, for a horror movie, there are ways to do this that I think would be clever, because horror movies are all about changing your expectations, right? And
yes, but this one
undercutting ideas.
This movie wants to do both, but yes.
That's the problem. It wants to do both. So, and it doesn't do it in like, it's not trying to be Evil Dead, right? It's not like funny. Like Evil Dead 2, rather. And so like you feel like you're laughing at it and not with it. So like they do this thing with the priest where he's like, yeah, the church won't do this exorcism, which is wild to me because it's like I can see that when it's earlier, but it's like, yeah, they're clearly possessed, but whatever. And then he like. He's like waiting out in the car praying, and they keep being like, the guy comes out and goes, the fight's in there, like, and you're waiting, like obviously he's going to join them, and he finally joins, and like it really is like a pause for claps, like pause for
the music
audience
swells
to applause. Yeah, and it's like he's not a major character.
Yeah, we don't know who he is. Like we don't even know his name really.
No, and then almost immediately his head is twisted all around and he dies.
Yep.
And I thought like that would have been cool if we kind of knew who the character was. The other problem is the movie does that several times. It's our big legacy character is back for exactly 15 minutes before she gets her eyes poked out.
Not even that long.
She goes into that house, and so that was a setup that I really liked. I liked that it was like, oh, shit has gone down here. And I like some of the shots, and like, yeah, like you said, it's kind of just aping the original, but that's why I liked it. Because I'm like, yeah, that's good. And she goes up to talk to the demon, and I was thinking like, so no one's going up with her? Like,
right,
what,
she's like
like
90.
the dad?
What?
Yeah.
Like it killed 2 guys the last time.
Exactly. And the guy downstairs is like, cool, I'll watch the door. Like, I don't know what he said, but whatever he said, I was like, why aren't you going up with the elderly lady who's going to talk to the young, spry demon? That's don't do that. And then immediately she gets her eyes poked out.
Yep.
And then she just spends the rest of the movie in a hospital bed. And I was like, so what was the point of that?
The point was
Why
to
did
get
you
us to
bring that
clap.
actress back. Yeah,
And then,
exactly.
Then like the end, when they have Reagan, they have Linda Blair come in at the end and reunite with her. And it was supposed to be a big applause moment. But like, the thing is they tell us they're estranged in this movie. So like, we've known they're estranged for an hour. And the movie wants to have the payoff of reuniting them. And it's like, you just told us they were estranged.
Right.
Like, we don't...
You could have done this at the beginning.
Yeah, like, this doesn't...
Yeah.
You don't get to have that clap because of a storyline you just invented. Like,
It's a very confused movie.
yeah,
Like, I would have taken...
confused is a good word, because did you have a problem following it? There were a few scenes where it's edited in such a way... Like, I think it's intentional because it's trying to keep you a little disoriented. I think the original's a little bit like this, but not as much. Where he doesn't really do establishing shots or anything. He just kind of drags you through the scenes, which is, I think it's intentional, but like in a lot of scenes, it did leave me fucking confused. Like it would jump hugely in time and in place. Like there's one scene where like the dad's on the phone, and then it cuts to a montage of them like teaming up like the fucking X-Men in the church. You remember that shot? Where it's like there's a dramatic shot, and it's the dad finally deciding we need to team up, and he's like talking to, I think he's talking to not Linda Blair. I think he might be talking to Ellen Burstyn. But anyway, there's a scene of him like deciding that they're going to do this exorcism, and then it cuts to like this real brief shot of all of them, like him, the other parents, his weird neighbor friend, the other
weird neighbor friend is
priest.
fascinating.
Yeah, my God, just all these people.
I couldn't figure out what his deal was.
I couldn't tell you what his name was either. So they all just show up in the church, and it's like this shot of them standing in the aisle at the church, like they're suiting up like the Avengers, and then it cuts from that to like a scene of them all arriving at the house, and it's like, what was that scene that they all went to the church for?
That's a good question.
It's like the movie is full of shit like this.
It's very, I don't know what. I'm curious to know what the fuck happened here. Is it just that they trusted him and this is the thing he produced?
I think so. I think
it was just bad.
I think he's
but
not
it felt
good at
like,
horror.
It felt confused in that, like, that's the thing is, like, I liked some of the lead up. I liked some of the ideas. And maybe that's what it is that they kind of work backwards, where they have all these ideas and they can't just like make them work. So they just cram them together. Like, it kind of feels like playing like D&D when you're not really like trying to do stuff your character would do. Like, it's very inconsistent.
Well, and it's...
Like The Neighbor is one where I'm like, I could never get a read on this guy and like what kind of person he was.
You can't with any of the characters.
This, like, he like broke into the scene that really got me. He's broke into his house because they do the scene where he comes home and his door's open, and it's like, ooh, maybe his daughter's home, or like something's happening.
Right,
and
exactly.
He goes in and everything's dark, and then we get jump scared by his neighbor going like, "Hey!" And he has like a Haitian, priest.
And
just
she comes
blessing
back.
his bathroom, and I'm like, why would you break into his house and do this?
Yeah,
that's fucked up. Especially since he's in a moment where he's like, I think his daughter's still missing.
His daughter's still missing at this point. Where there's something
so it's like,
about
don't do that.
Yeah,
and then I thought he wasn't going to forgive him for that, and then he just. They
never mention it again. Like, that scene exists just so they can introduce the Haitian priestess lady later in the movie.
I think it's even worse. I think they exist so they could have a scare.
Well, this is what I wanted to say about that. Like, that scene, okay, so his daughter's been missing for, I think, over a day at this point. They're gone for 3 days, so she's been gone for like 2 days at this point. He comes home, he sees his doors open. And what does he do? He creeps inside and starts creeping through his house, peeking around for a monster like he knows is in a horror movie. Not like a man whose daughter has been missing for 2 days. Like, if you came home and saw your door open and heard somebody in your house and you were this man, what would you think? You might think it's your missing kid. So the fact that he doesn't run through there shouting his daughter's name is like, does he know he's in a... Like, so many of these characters, it's not only that they just do what the scene needs them to do, they also behave like they've seen Exorcist movies before. Like, it all builds to, like you're saying, they had these ideas, and some of them are okay. Like I like the setup, the idea of two girls going off in the woods and disappearing, and they come back and they have no memory, and it's all weird. That's a good setup. But like,
oh yeah,
when it gets down to like they ultimately had no ideas except to just mash them together for a big uber exorcism at the end, and the exorcism is just these two girls tied to chairs back to back, and that's it. Like that's like.
And like you said, nothing really. I mean, the exorcism fails, and if the movie treated it like that, like you said, with not this like weird message of hope at the end.
It doesn't treat it like it was an utter failure, which it was. Like, you fucking failed. The thing you came together to do didn't work. The only reason the demon left is because you played its game, and it took the other girl to hell with it. This was a failure.
This is another thing I liked about it. I liked the idea of the exorcism. What I mean by that is like several religions. And that was a cool idea. Like kind of like just them like being like, I guess let's do it in this kitchen. Like how unceremonious it was of just like them like throwing together this exorcism. There was
something.
They wanted this like underdog idea of an exorcism, which I liked.
Yeah.
But it didn't. I mean, it goes wrong as it would in that situation. But then, they treat it. I don't know. It's weird because I like the idea that one of the girls dies. Yeah, and he's like, I'm just happy to have his fucking daughter. And I like that it's like, okay, that's kind of a win. But it's not like
not the way the movie treats it.
Devastating. And then exactly. And then the movie sort of treats it like a big win.
Yeah.
And it's like it would have been bad. Like if you remember, the original Exorcist is bittersweet. The priests have to fucking die in order for it to happen.
And you're not even sure God exists at the end.
Yeah.
Like,
there's a couple things I wanted to shout out.
It's the same thing in the original Exorcist, right? Just real quick.
Yeah.
Is you don't actually know if the exorcism worked, right? Because all that actually happens is Father Damien says, "Take me," and the demon says, "Sure," and then he jumps out the window. So like, I don't think the exorcism actually works in the first one.
Right, and neither it doesn't in this one
either. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't think is a terrible instinct.
No, it's not a bad instinct. It's just the movie, it takes a victory lap by having Ellen Burstyn do this monologue over this montage about like hope and togetherness and belief. And it's like the movie wasn't any of this.
Right.
Like,
it's a lot of that. Like it's a lot of, I think, still like decent ideas or decent imagery kind of trapped in a movie that is otherwise not great at all. I wanted to shout out two things the internet got really upset about, and neither of which bothered me personally.
Sure.
And we could talk it out. The patriarchy line, I didn't care. I get that like.
Oh, it's
like I think she's saying it as a joke. Like the character is joking a little bit. It's meant she says it and he kind of laughs.
It's impossible to tell.
Yeah, but my feeling of that is like it's like. A older lady just kind of just like using the word in a funny way, and like people were like, those priests died for you, ma'am, and it's like, yeah, I think she knows that. I get it. Like I just didn't ping me. Also, it being anti-abortion didn't ping me either.
Oh, it pinged me.
Did you see that?
It pinged me.
Really?
You can't accidentally have two major characters in your movie both have the same sin revolving around deciding not to keep a fetus.
Here's my thought on that. Is with exorcism movies, inevitably priests and religion are always the heroic side. I didn't think this... I thought they were tapping the guilt around this religious woman having an abortion. And they didn't say...
The thing...
They were like... The demon was like going at her guilt. And I think the problem with the movie is it didn't say anything. It never said anything.
Right. Like, and also...
And so it just leaves it open for people to interpret in this like it asks the question and then it doesn't say an answer. So it comes off as very anti-abortion because of it's not like filling in those blanks. I think it did a similar thing later or earlier where they do this thing where they're like, there's a homeless encampment and the two like conservative parents are like, oh, they're bums. Like they like get really like angry about the homeless. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's a weird thing to include in this. Are you trying to show me that they're bad?
Oh,
and then later the father talks to
people cheered in my theater.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Because then what was wild is I thought it was like the woke cops who were like, actually, like the cop like has to like correct the parents about like the homeless people. And it's like, yeah, totally woke police. And then later he talks to some homeless people and they're monsters to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, so are you saying that those parents are correct?
Yes, they are.
The homeless people. And it was like, what a weird thing to do in this movie.
The movie
that
is
picked me more because the abortion thing just sort of like kind of fizzles out more. And the homeless one seems to like be like, yes, the homeless people are bad.
The movie is full of shit like this because it's written carelessly. Like they don't like that. That's like the most positive. The biggest benefit of the doubt I can give this movie is that it's incredibly careless. So it introduces things like it's a movie about judgment and demons and damnation, and it has two characters that wanted to terminate a pregnancy. Like you can't do that and not be saying something unless you're fucking careless. In which case, that's the best thing I can say about them is that they were so careless they didn't realize they were shouting something with that decision.
The first lady, the religious, like the guilt of a religious lady having an abortion, I understood as being like, yeah, that's something the demon would like ping, like would go after.
It's also
and I think horror movies are all about exploring those things. The second abortion message is the one
that, real quick, it's so first draft. It's so first draft. What can the demon pick on this former nun for? Oh, she had a baby and had an abortion. Okay, you mean the thing that every movie does? Okay.
I was about to say it happens a million times in horror movies, but that scans. It's the second one where I'm not even sure what they were trying to say.
No idea. I don't think they were either. They were just trying to give him guilt. Sorry.
Yeah, the second one is that his wife died in an earthquake in Haiti, I believe.
Yeah,
and she was pregnant. And the doctors, and this was one that I pinged this where I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it happens, so I don't know. They were like, we can only save your wife or the child. And I was like, I don't know if that actually happens, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think they just save the mother, right? Isn't that what they do?
Right?
I think that's what they do.
I don't know if a doctor would ever have that, statement. But, and then the reveal is that he chose his wife, which,
yes, of course you would. Of course you would. Of course you would.
Make another.
Of course you would.
But then they do this whole thing where she's like, "You don't even want me," and I guess it is kind of that's like about shoot, like it's weird because it's
weird. Exactly.
That as an abortion thing.
Well, they don't exactly connect, but they're both. You can't deny they're both about deciding what to do, deciding not to have a fetus, deciding to terminate a pregnancy is what it is.
Yes, but it's two different versions.
Yes.
I think they wanted to do the decision of who lives and who dies because that reflects the decision.
The final
later.
choice, yeah.
But ultimately, they didn't really know what they were saying.
No, they didn't have anything to say. They didn't bother to sit down and think of something to say. So they just crammed these elements in there that are shouting things. Like that. Those two characters having that backstory, that's shouting. Like that's a very loud thing to say.
Same with the homeless encampment.
Yes,
it was like, why
and then having them be right.
And I think what they were trying to do with the second part, with the people like telling him this like grotesque thing, like, oh, maybe your daughter's fucking all these homeless people or whatever they're saying.
Yeah.
That was to add, because they, like, again, horror movies love these upsetting ideas. I liked the idea that this was trying to be psychologically and emotionally
upsetting.
Horror.
Yeah. I did appreciate the restraint in those terms, in the sense that there really isn't jump scares in this movie. There's a couple, like a little bit, but
at first, it started bothering me because in the theater they would do these cut jump scares where it'd be like, cut to him opening a drawer real fast. And I was like, stop that. Like, come on.
They even mimicked the first shot of The Exorcist, right? With the dogs fighting, and it's a jump scare.
Yeah.
Because it's
yeah,
dogs.
And I'm like, I don't,
like, oh shit.
And it's one of my least favorites where it just like break the audio real quick, like really loud cut. It's like, come on, man.
It does a thing that I mean, again, it's just because he's just copying Friedkin. But like in the build-up, when it's like he's in his photography studio and the jackhammer's outside and the kids are fussing and he's trying to corral these kids while the family's for a family photo while the kid is fussing and the jackhammer's going. It has this build-up of dread that's very good. But like again, it's just he's just copying what was in the original movie.
Like, they did like The Ring with the photograph of the kid.
Oh yeah,
what was that all about?
Yeah, it's
right. Again, it felt like a lot of ideas. They're like, yeah, let's throw that in
and
there.
so much of this movie is just people spouting rules about demons and religion and faith and exorcism. It's endless. There's no kidding. There's a couple of scenes from the point they meet Ellen Burstyn until they actually do the exorcism. Like every single scene is that. It's like one scene of somebody explaining, like pontificating some bit of exposition about exorcism and faith and belief. And then the very next scene will be a different character doing the same thing. Like not even illustrating a different aspect of it. The same aspect of, they're just hitting the same point. I felt like I was going mad when I was watching this movie.
It's like if someone ripped on a gravity bong and then did a line of cocaine, where it's a lot of people saying stuff and none of it really amounts to anything in the end. And it's really weird because I don't think it needed to say anything. Like it sets up that expectation by setting all these things up.
Exactly.
The idea where they do like kind of the parents are like they're kind of conservative and they're like kind of mean to the dad, and then that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, that
ultimately,
I actually liked that because it only happens in one scene and it's just kind of a flare up, and I actually appreciated that. It felt like the realest moment in the movie. Because it's just these two groups of frantic parents. It's the mom and dad of the one kid and then the single dad of the other kid. And they're in the police station and they finally turn on each other for just a little bit. But it does happen.
They're trying to do... Yeah, they do these little things where it's like they don't respect each other's religion.
No, well, they sort of do that. They sort of do that.
Exactly. It's a good idea. And then they'll do these subtle things, which I liked, which is like the idea that the dad, like, takes off his shoes once he like the dad on the other not the main character dad, the other dad,
yeah, when he finally takes off his shoes.
He has more of an arc. He has more of an arc where like he's suddenly like just like, yeah, I'll do it all, anything that'll work, you know.
Oh, and
he accepts the ultimately Haitian magic.
Yeah, and he's ultimately the one that makes the selfish decision and says, I choose our daughter, and of course it's a trick.
Yeah. He kind of should have been the main character more,
or the main character should have gone through what he goes through, like because
he went through.
Because like they're showing the same thing, right? Where this dad the mom is much more willing to believe in supernatural stuff. They're a God-bothering family, but she's clearly more into it than he is. So he has like when they all come in to do the exorcism, everybody takes off their shoes except him. He refuses. And then after like the first round of it, where like things start getting really intense and they go outside to like regroup and they come back inside and he takes his shoes off. Like they tried to do the same thing with the main character dad, where they have him like when they're doing the Lord's Prayer and he's not saying it, and then the demon's like, you don't believe, and then he comes back in and starts saying it and the demon's like, you believe. It's very dumb, but like they should have had him wrestle. I don't know. Like if you wanted to show that,
no, they should have given him the other dad's arc. You're right.
If it was supposed to be him struggling with his faith, instead of just like, I don't believe, reads a book, I believe, gets to the exorcism, I don't believe, comes back in the room, I believe so now, it's fine. Like it changes on a whim on whatever the scene needs. But like, so if they actually wanted to show that, they should have given him what the other dad goes through. Like, exactly. It's more of a, have him wrestle with it. Have him make the selfish decision. Especially because I know like
that's what what a horror movie would do. Have him.
I was gonna say one thing we're not talking about is that this is clearly meant to lead into other movies, right? Like this is clearly setting up. Well, not clearly, but like... Yeah, no,
I actually didn't get that vibe because it felt like this story was done. Like the daughter...
Oh, they're going to get that other girl back. And they're not just...
so?
They're not just going to leave Ellen Burstyn blind in the hospital with Reagan reunited. Like something's going to happen with that. Like there was like moving people into place, I guess, in this. Like that's what I think. But like...
you're probably right. Well, obviously they want to make 3.
Like, especially if they were doing this as a setup to lead into other movies, they should have ended with the main character dad making the selfish choice.
Yeah.
Because it leaves him somewhere to go after that.
Yeah, my final note was they definitely shouldn't make more of these.
Oh, God, no. No.
Because Yeah, I if anything, so like here's how you make more of these, and here's how you make this. Don't connect them all. It's not a Marvel movie. I can't stress this enough.
Dave, did you see this news?
A Marvel movie.
Did you see this news where also this week or last week, it was around the release of this movie, they sold the Halloween television rights to make a television show for Halloween. And they're talking about like it's going to be the Halloween cinematic universe. And it's like, guys, what makes you think we want this?
Right. When has this worked?
Like, are we still trying the cinematic universe thing? It's 2023. It worked one time. It worked once
for something that it was a comic book. Yeah, it didn't work for comic book.
Right, it worked for
companies.
Right, source material that is serialized. So it's like it's designed to be this. That's why it worked. That's part of why it worked.
Right, and
Anyway.
like there are ways to connect horror movies. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously Evil Dead Follows Ash. It's about tone. Exorcisms, it's like, what are we following? The demon? What are we following? The characters? What is happening? Just if you want to make an Exorcist series, make it an anthology. Like, for example, if you want to do a TV show version, make every season a different exorcism.
Yeah,
and a different
I think
exorcist.
I
still don't think that would be great, but that's
apparently
what
the TV show is all right, like the one they made in the mid-teens.
I watched the first episode, and
is
the
it
moment
bad?
the priest. Here's when I shut it off. I didn't get through the whole thing. It was like a bad boy priest, and there was a scene where a priest literally pulled a gun on another priest, and I shut it off.
Oh, that's dumb. That's
Because I was
real
like,
dumb.
yeah. They're trying to be like gritty and like a cop drama, and I was like, we're done here. We're good.
Yeah.
Maybe it got better, but that was like, nope.
I had just seen some horror fans call to the show as being surprisingly decent, but
maybe it's good later.
Yeah, this fucking movie.
I want to talk about the demon real quick because that I thought was one of the biggest problems. The first exorcism.
Yeah.
The demon feels like a character. Like, it's so many fun phrases, so many things happen with that demon, that little girl, that it's like, I felt like the exorcism, it feels like there was more time in the original with the exorcist, exorcism. Like, that felt like a longer sequence to me. And it felt like this slower degradation, and the demon was, more iconic as a character. And this one, the demon felt without personality.
It's the same as every other character in this movie. It's just, it says a couple of the things that we expect it to say. It does this thing that I saw one review call out, but this is not necessarily a problem just with this movie. This is a problem with exorcism or possession movies in general, where they have the demon, the way the demon will mess with you is to call out some secret sin. Yeah. But it's like, do you think, like, it calls out the former nun's sin to her, but she's the only other person in the room, and she's, like, horrified? Well, I get why you'd be horrified, but, like, when they know it's a demon, like, in the end of the movie, when they're in the exorcism scene, and it starts doing that, like, it's calling out their guilt to them. It's like, these characters, presumably, if it's their guilt, they think about this shit every day. So, like, what is the demon saying? You're thinking about how you feel bad about your wife dying. He's like, yeah, I am. I do every day. What the what?
Yeah.
Like, it's just,
it's hard because you almost have to. Yeah.
I can't
to, like, set up characters who are emotionally puritanical and fragile, like, in order for that to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has to really be something shocking and not something that's like an understandable mistake or a human. I don't know, but it's like it's
the original. Honestly, like, the original had the element of, we hadn't seen this, but he's like, your mother sucks cock in hell. He should be like, she sure does. Let's keep going. Like, that's the whole point. You're told, like, don't listen to it. Yeah. It's going to say fucked up shit. And it's like, nowadays, with the internet, it's like, there's nothing anybody can say to me anymore.
Right, there's nothing the demon could say that would be like a random racist on Twitter is going to shock me more than this demon.
It's like nothing the demon could tell me that I haven't told myself every day.
Like we said at the beginning, this movie, the original Exorcist, is 50 years old. We have had 50 years of possession movies playing the same tricks in the Exorcist playbook. So when this new Exorcist movie comes out and that's all it has to offer is the same tricks, it's kind of like,
I wrote that down. That's a huge problem.
Not only is it not scary, it's almost like a farce at this point. Like, it feels like like Leslie Odom Jr. in this movie, like my brother and I were joking, he looks angry that he's in it. Like, it's like, it feels like we're just putting on, this movie felt like going through the motions more so than any movie I've watched recently.
Yeah, this maybe should. I felt like this. It goes without saying, but we should establish this first thing. This movie shouldn't be made. Like, that was my first instinct on this movie. Is like, I mean, there's no version.
Not
like
this version. Surely
made,
not this version should not have been. If you're gonna make this movie, at least have an idea. I beg of you. If you're gonna resurrect a fucking masterpiece, an agreed upon masterpiece, at least have an idea.
And the idea can't just be, what if it was two of them?
Right, what if it's two? That's not an idea.
Don't get me wrong, I thought for a demon, that would have been... here's the wild
That's like the beginning of an idea.
Right, they didn't even finish that idea. So they do the thing where they're like, their hearts are beating as one. I'm like, that's cool. That's what I mean with the demon, where I'm like, that would have been cool if this demon with a very realized personality is communicating for both of them. And it's clear that it's the same demon in both of them. And it's like... fucking with that idea. It's coordinating. Like, there's some cool things you could do. It doesn't do any of that.
They did it once. They had them finish each other's sentences once when they're doing drip drop because they're hearing the water. Because all they could come up with for that idea was like, oh, we should just do a real cheesy scare like that. It's like, well, you could have woven that throughout, where it's just a constant thing where they're constantly finishing each other's sentences. Like, and that would be really weird and off-putting, right? Like, if it just happened constantly. Yeah. Anyway,
ultimately, I think this was top down, and what I mean by that is, like, so I don't have evidence to support this. Maybe if I looked into it, the new Blade Runner, I feel like no one was like, get me a new Blade Runner. Oh no, they were. The studio did want a new Blade Runner, right? And they were going to give it to Ridley Scott. But Blade Runner, that felt like someone with an idea approached the studio.
That's an idea.
More.
Yeah, that's an idea. That's a story that expands upon the themes of the original movie. It's a pretty good movie.
And honestly, maybe it wasn't what happened. Maybe a writer was assigned it and they just nailed it. I don't quite know, but the vibe you get is it feels like they figured out a reason to have a sequel before they actually decided to have a sequel.
Right, before we're on the fucking day of about to roll cameras. Okay, what's this movie?
Right. It's sort of like you buy a car and you're like, what do I use my car for? And you think about, what do you use your car for? And then you buy a car. They didn't think about it. It felt like they paid a lot of money for The Exorcist, and then they're like, let's get the Halloween guy. And they went to him and said, will you do an Exorcist? And you can't blame him for going, yeah, sure. Like, that makes sense.
Right.
And
who would say no? Nobody would say no.
Right. And then he sat down and said, all right, so what should an Exorcist sequel be? And do I even like The Exorcist? That's the vibe I got, which was like, they decided this is who's going to make it, and we're going to make it. We're going to make 3 of them. And now let's think about what it's going to be. And you really feel that here, because it's a lot of ideas that probably came from a lot of people, and it never really congeals into a fully realized story, to the point that, like, when you were like, they're going to make more, I'm like, wow, I guess they were setting up more. I didn't even get that vibe. Like, that's what's funny is, like, and again, it's all these ideas. It's people online are like, it's anti-abortion. And then there's people who are like, it does this woke patriarchy thing. Like, everybody hates it for different political reasons, because it's a mishmash of all these ideas just sort of thrown out in this movie, in this, like, you know, this slapdash scattershot way.
It's careless. There was not care put into the things that should have had care put into them, which is like, what is this movie about? What's the story? What are we saying? Like, they never had those conversations, it doesn't feel like.
The question of how do you make a good exorcism sequel, right? How do you do that? What's something that people haven't seen before with an exorcism movie? Because that's what you have to do, right? You have to say, we're making a new Exorcist movie, and it's never been good in the past, right? How do you make that good? And this is the problem, I think, with the Halloween ones, is they basically said, let's modernize the way the filmmaking. And that's the end of it, the thought. let's make it look good. Let's have like a cool oneer where Michael Myers walks into a house, and that is cool. I liked the filmmaking in those Halloween movies. I hated the writing because they don't think past that.
I liked the filmmaking in the first one. Like in the first one, that's a good. David Gordon Green is a director that I liked. I think he has really gone like Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, and this one, Exorcist Believer. I think are bad. Like I think they're badly made.
Yeah, there's an element of like it feels like you forgot to how to make a movie.
Yeah,
well, here's what I'll say.
I think they're badly assembled. Like
I'm
these
going
are
through
bad
my notes
films.
of this film. All my notes of this film. It starts the first half. I said my notes are like, yeah, it's going good. All my second half notes are bad. And so the question, why did I come out of this movie being like, that wasn't terrible? I think I was just in a theater alone with it and I could vibe with it a little more. And so there were I could appreciate like some of the ideas in it a little more. Also combined with the fact that I was really dreading this movie, the internet made it seem like it was going to be like Master of Disguise, you know? And so my expectations were my lowest of the low.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
So I had nowhere to go but up.
Comically bad. Like bad in a fascinating way. It's bad to me.
In a mundane way, for
right?
Sure.
It's the biggest sin a movie can be. Right? It's boring. This movie's boring as shit. Like I can't tell you how many times I looked at the time on my phone. I'm like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah, it did feel long.
Because it's
not
going.
Long.
It's not going. It doesn't go anywhere. And then once it reveals where it's going, it's like, boy, this sucks. Like I don't. It was all building up to this, huh? Okay.
I think you could cut some stuff out, and some of the broad ideas would stay in. Cut out all of Ellen Burstyn. We don't need her. You don't need her.
You really don't. You really don't. It has nothing to do with the story.
You don't even need to connect this to the original. Just use the name. I think also don't set up the idea that you're making more.
How
I love the
modularly
idea
it was
that the little
written.
girl just goes to hell.
Yeah, well,
I thought that was a good idea.
The problem I had with that is it kind of breaks an unspoken rule of possession movies, I guess, in that you never see the possession from the possessed's point of view.
Well, I was about to propose something. Is that you kind of have to break that rule now, don't you? You're making a new Exorcist movie.
It's just
here's what I would have done.
Yeah.
Here's my proposal for an Exorcist movie. Do all kind of a similar idea where it's like a dad or something, and the people around him and like his daughter is acting possessed or something like that. And make the reveal be that you're actually watching the entire thing from the character who's actually possessed.
Yeah, that's
like one of the only places to go.
That's like the only place left to go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, do something where you realize, oh, they're stuck in their own mind, and what's actually happening is they're tied to a bed, and there's a demon. Like, do something like that. You got to do something new, because as we're saying, it's a 50-year-old idea, and they've never really made a good possession movie or an iconic one.
Yeah.
Since, here and there you get some moments where you're like, oh, that was a cool idea. That was neat. Oh, that was a good shot. But I can't think of an exorcism movie that I'm like, wow, that held up. And that was a fully real. And I don't know. Maybe I'm forgetting something, Well, and obviously, if you brought
the only other
in,
one
like,
I'll put is like Emily Rose, and that's just because they made it a courtroom drama.
You can also brought in like Talk to Me. That's a demon possession movie, right?
Oh,
like
yeah,
you can brought in your definition, but when you're talking about like The Exorcist, that style, biblical demon possessing,
movie, right, like Evil Dead, technically, but like a possession movie. We're talking about movies like The Exorcist, where the singular possession is the focus of the entire film.
Yeah, there's not much. There's no, or you do a thing where you actually weirdly enough focus about the story around the exorcism and have something like horrific be happening in that realm. Like you have to do something new. Then little girl is possessed. We have an exorcism. Just saying, let's do two girls, that's not enough. It's just not enough. And they didn't have any ideas.
They couldn't even not make it a little girl.
Yeah. They didn't have a $400 or $400 million idea here.
No.
Have it be a bodybuilder. Have it be a grown, like, make it like the heart is like, how do we even tie this person down? Like, do something there. Do something different. And there's nothing different here enough to justify this movie's existence from the start. And so it's then like, okay, so there's nothing here to justify. It better be really well made, or it better have like a modern message or do something in the story. And I think they felt that pressure, but they just never had an idea.
Nope.
And so they threw out all these ideas.
Couldn't wring an idea out of this stone.
No, they really couldn't.
Oh,
and the
well.
idea that they're going to do 3 of these, and the studio's now scratching their heads like, what are we going to do? And it's because the studios have this very cynical view where they're like, what do they want? We brought back the legacy characters. It has the Exorcist name. What more? What more do these people want? And the answer is like they want a good film.
Yeah, the only ability they have is comparing numbers on a piece of paper. And like, well, we did this last time, and the numbers were big. How come the numbers aren't big this time? The numbers are all the same.
Yeah, there's nothing on an executive level that they will be able to do here to steer this in the right direction. They just don't have that in them.
No, it takes. This is a creativity problem.
Right, and they'll just fire. I assume they'll fire this director, this team, hire new people, and that's not going to fix it either. And then maybe they'll do Star Wars where they'll just hire back the first guy because they're like, well, yours made slightly more money, so we'll bring you back. But there's no ideas here whatsoever. There's some cool moments. Again, I thought there was some cool little moments. I liked bringing the Haitian magic. I liked that they were showing like, just kind of similar to the first one, they're showing the exorcism as like a technical thing. As like, oh, they breathed out this air. Now we're going to collect this and put this water outside. Like, I like those instincts, but those are all better in the original.
Yes. Yeah, I wish it would have followed through on that idea of like showing that this is how exorcisms are handled in different cultures, instead of just having the Haitian priestess be in the same room as everybody is shouting the Lord's Prayer. It's like, okay. And then like, yeah, it's
just say fuck it and make a dumb movie like The Nun.
Sure.
That would have gotten people to like it.
Right.
I still would have hated it.
Yeah.
Like, that was the thing. That was what I admired, is this film's attempt to make more of an adult, dramatic version. Again, the scene to me that I thought was the strongest was literally when they're found and they're doing like the horrific process of seeing if they were like
the tests
molested,
and they're doing the rape kit and stuff. Yeah,
and it was a really powerful scene of showing these girls just going through this awful process. And it was really well done. And I was like, this is strong. This is like kind of the tone I wanted the whole movie, which is like talking about like showing what the horror these girls are going through, and like kind of doing the more dramatic version of this, the more like adult version. But I knew in the back of my head, like ultimately they're just going to be tied to chairs.
Right. They're just going to be tied to chairs and growling. And it's always the same.
And again, it was like I was finding these, like I was hitting these moments where I was like, "That's cool. That's a cool direction to go." But I was sort of grasping at them, but I never really found anything ultimately. So, like, again, this movie's not good. It's at no point did I think this movie was good.
I think there was an interesting idea with what we were talking about of going outside the system. Of how, like, it's not an officially sanctioned exorcism, blah, blah, blah. So it's like all these, like, people trying to, there's a former nun who's trying to do it, even though she's not ordained. And then we have the science with with the heart monitors and stuff. And then we have the Haitian priestess doing her thing. And it's like,
neat idea.
There's a neat idea of, it seemed like there could have been a bit, and I'm not sure how intentional it was, but like it seemed like there was a little bit about the healthcare system in that, right? Where it's like they have to go to like GoFundMe essentially, or go outside the system because the church, your insurance won't cover this medical procedure. But like they keep, like we said earlier, they keep sort of scratching at these interesting ideas and then not doing anything with them.
It would have been cool if there was like a whole sequence where there was no religion and the doctor was actually making headway, like drugging up the demon, and like the demon actually is less effective. Like the idea that modern medicine can actually help. Like there's some ideas.
I think that's
explore.
I think that's a component in the isn't it? Don't they drug Reagan up in the original?
Oh,
I can't
maybe.
remember.
I don't know.
Anyway.
But yeah, ultimately,
it's
it's funny
idea.
because I did come out. I guess I did like the first time I saw this. I was like, I think I kind of liked it. And then now I saw it a week later, a week out. It's more of just like I mostly forgot it, and then um, like it's more to me. It felt like ultimately unremarkable. I guess is my where I'm landing on it, which is like there was some things I liked about it, but overall the characters were Looney Tunes. Like it wasn't a good movie by any stretch, you know. And I guess it's that I also didn't expect it to be anything, you know. There's all these trash sequels to The Exorcist, and The Omen, and this is just another one of those in my head, which is like,
Yep, it's another one on the
people
pile.
will, yeah, maybe people will remember it for having a couple fun moments, and a cool ideas, but it's not. It kind of I have this feeling with a lot of these legacy sequels where they're like, we're bringing it back. Here we go. And it's like, you just did another one. You acted like this was going to be a big deal. And then you just did another one, another shitty sequel that we've had.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. You just did
It's
Halloween
like the
H2O
Terminators.
again.
Yeah. It's like the Terminators where they're like, here comes the big one. And it's like, no, you're just one of the other sequels one of the many sequels that they tried to do. And again, some are better than others. But ultimately, it's just part 5, part 6. Like, that's the thing that I think Hollywood or the executives still don't understand, which is like very few sequels in general will ever stand up. They'll just be another crappy sequel. It doesn't matter how much fanfare or hype you put towards it. That's what it ends up just being because the first one was of a time. It was a story. It was the best version of that story.
I mean, obviously there are exceptions. Like the Marvel system is designed so that each sequel generates bigger box office.
Sure.
But yeah, for sure, like it's a really strange thing to try and do. It's like, yeah, we have decades of data at this point that sequels don't work.
That's how I feel about the Scream ones. Like the Scream ones are a good example where they keep making it be like new and improved. Look at how much better this is shot. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't do anything. You just made another sequel. Like you didn't do anything new. You didn't reinvent it. You did the same thing all the other movies do. You did, oh, who is it? Oh, it's these people. Oh, it's 3 this time. And it's like, yeah, I think it was 3 once before. I don't really care. You know, that's what it is like every time they're like, but look, it's different. And it's like, no, you did the exact same thing. You just sort of like gussied it up a little bit. You grittied it a little bit, or
they just changed the modular parts, and that's just a sequel. That's
yeah, and that feels like the same with this. They're like, here it comes, the big, amazing new one, and I'm like, I don't know. They made 3 of these, and then they made that Exorcist Beginnings or Origins, and then they made this, and they're all the same. They're all the same. They're not The Exorcist, so I don't know. Don't make 2 more. Like. I don't know, sell the rights again? Or like, here's the problem. This is ultimately the problem, right? It's like, it's kind of the Twitter problem, which is, oh, sorry, there's a phone ringing in the room with me.
I don't think Twitter is going to be a problem for much longer.
Yeah, well, no, what I mean by the Twitter problem is, like a bank, like I've been hearing like a bank might buy it back. And the question is, of course, buy what back? There's nothing to buy back. It's a website, right? You can buy the name twitter.com. You could buy like their computers, but there's no assets. You know what I mean? There's no assets of value.
There's nothing to buy, yeah. It's all the equipment. What
studios don't seem to understand because they've made this mistake and it's worked. Don't get me wrong, you know, it worked. But did it also? Because I'm pretty sure
they never make more money is the thing.
Right. Like Lucasfilm, I don't know if Star Wars has made them a whole lot of money.
I don't know because they've spent some on all those movies.
They
the
bought
theme
it
park
for
stuff.
$4 billion. Yeah, there's no way they didn't make money back for that. But
they've also been also been doing merchandise. I'm sure they've made money. They've spent a ton, but I'm sure they've made money.
I also don't think they made nearly as much as they thought they would, right? Like that hotel, that ridiculous hotel perfectly shows the hubris.
Had to fucking close, and then like they were like, we're going to do a movie a year, and then it's like, we're not going to do any more movies. It's TV all the way now, because we couldn't even figure out a fucking idea for Star Wars. Star Wars, we couldn't even figure out an idea for.
I don't think they made nearly as much as they thought, because what it comes down to is Star Wars isn't actually worth $4 billion, nor is The Exorcist worth $400 million, because there's no assets. There's nothing there. They can't turn this around and sell it to someone else because there's nothing to sell. They don't make physical, media. They don't make rental sales. There's nothing there to sell. So there was nothing to buy. So they're going to have to make 2 more movies. And they're they'll be lucky to
to even approach making back that money, they have to make 2 more of these.
Yeah. Or they could just say, all right, mulligan, we're making another. Yeah, it's just the thing they don't understand, which is they bought magic beans. That's what they bought, because the title The Exorcist is meaningless. It's not Star Wars. It's a movie from from 50 years ago.
Star Wars wasn't even Star Wars, it turns out.
Right.
It was for a bit, but when you keep making shitty movies, people catch on.
Yeah. It's just wild how irresponsibly they're doing their business now. The people who who's worth $400 million?
Nobody.
No, yeah, I guess nobody. But if anybody was, it's someone like The Rock, or someone who actually puts butts in seats. It's a filmmaker. It's a person. It's an idea. It's not a title. And that's what they don't seem to understand.
It's not
Exorcist is worthless. It's not an IP.
I mean, it's an IP in the way that IPs are. Anyway, that's a whole conversation we could get into.
It's a whole conversation, but for the most part,
they only understand things in terms of. That's the only way they can understand creativity is in terms of IPs.
Yeah, and especially with this, it's just why would you do this? There's nowhere to go with this. I don't know how they're going to make their money back. They can't even sell it off. It's what is it worth to resell it? There's nothing to resell. It's very silly.
And where is this going to go? Is part 3 going to be the epic superhero showdown with the demon? This, fuck this. What is this? Why did you spend so much money on this?
Right, because Halloween, at least it's they made sequels to Halloween. It didn't go good, but you can sequel it technically. Exorcist, again, they made sequels, but they're kind of it's
well, it's because
tangentially related.
They've
it's
locked themselves into a trilogy is the thing.
Yeah.
So they have to make 2 sequels. What are they going to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea where this is going to go. I don't think the main character and his daughter are going to be in it.
They shouldn't.
You're right. I could see it being related to the girl who went to hell, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I thought of that as a fun horror conclusion. I'm just not sure. It's, man, dipshits. Yeah, I don't know. I let me see. Do my notes have anything else? Probably not.
No, I'm done.
I just think it's funny because I remember coming out of it being it wasn't bad. And all my notes are this is bad. And I think that's funny because it shows how much a little vibes go a long way, for me at least.
Yeah.
God, it was so funny when she stabs her eyes out.
Yep, just immediately. Immediately.
Amazing. Amazing.
She'd been in the movie for 6 minutes at that point.
Yeah. They should have literally someone should have handed her a paycheck from off camera.
Yeah, it was so... man.
Embarrassing.
This movie sucks. Fuck, I hated this movie. All right, I'm done.
Well, get it when it's free on streaming. On fucking Max.
Don't do anything else with your life. I beg you, do anything else with your life. Don't see it. Don't give this money or attention.
I mean, no one did. I think on its second weekend it made $1 million.
Yeah, it's the absence of creativity. It's the absence of care. It's the absence of responsibility. This movie is very irresponsible for all the reasons we talked about.
This director, he's got to go back to make comedies.
He's got to.
I'm begging him.
Stop.
No one wants him to make horror movies.
Yeah.
He doesn't make good horror movies.
No.
And like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell him besides that. It's like you've tried 4 times now, and like nobody likes it because you don't. I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
There's just nothing in them.
It's like
There's nothing in them.
Yeah. And they're not making, it's like the ultimate bubble, which is like, it'd be one thing if these movies were making $1 billion, even if I didn't like them. Like the Jurassic Worlds, it's like, I know why they kept making them.
Right.
Because they kept making them
printing money, basically.
This one, it's like, he just keeps failing, and the studio's like, that's okay. Here's some more money. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, stop giving him money to make a horror movie. They're not, like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's like, breaking even, or maybe there's a little bit of profit.
No, because I mean, like the last 2
understand
Halloweens came out like on streaming.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know who keeps handing him money to make, I don't know, man. It's fucking weird. Real weird. Like, I'm not mad, I'm fascinated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It totally does.
Yeah. Anywho.
Yep.
We have a Patreon, Tom.
We sure do, Dave. Why don't you tell them about it?
Patreon.com/gamefully unemployed. GAMEFULLY unemployed. For just $5 of your human dollars a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts. Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. I see a world watching this one, but we watch all sorts of fun movies. You know, stuff and things, robot jocks, etc. You get the picture. Check it out. Check our Patreon.
Well, I lost you, so I'm just going to do my plug. We also have a store. Head over to GamefullyUnemployed.com. You can find a link to our Teespring store, where you have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your little possessed peepers onto that.
You lost me, like, emotionally?